AITA for telling my sil I won't change my 4-month-old daughter's name for her. I gave birth to my daughter, Ember, 4 months ago. My husband and I both loved her name and that's how it was chosen. We announced the day she was born and nobody said anything negative or gave a reason for us not to use it then. I say this because 3 days ago my SIL, who is married to my brother, sat me down and asked me to change the name because it's the name of her stillborn daughter she had with her ex-husband 7 years ago. She told me she tried to keep it quiet but she couldn't let me keep calling my daughter Ember because it's such a painful reminder for her. She told me she really feels like we should change her name. I gently told SIL that my daughter was 4 months old and her name is on the birth certificate and it would cost us to change it, so we will not. She told me she tried so hard not to say anything and the fact she did eventually break and bring this up should show how hard this is for her and make me more willing to change the name for her sake. I told my husband about it afterward and he felt the same way I did. He told me it seemed like a weak excuse to wait for, almost 5 months, to tell us, when she had the chance long before this. My brother found out about the conversation with his wife and he reached out and told me she mentioned it to him 2 months ago and that she was battling with asking us to change the name since, but he understands why I said no and supports the decision. Yesterday she reached out to me again and asked me if we had decided on a new name yet and I told her my answer is still no and she asked why and I told her she waited 4 months to tell us. She became very angry very quickly and told me if she had lost my niece my response would be different and I should see this as her losing my niece because she would have been if she were alive. She also told me my daughter is going to grow up always hearing about the cousin I gave her the same name as and that I should reconsider before burdening my daughter with that. She told me a good person with good morals would. I should also mention I knew she had suffered a pregnancy loss, but it was implied she had a miscarriage far earlier and not a stillborn child. I never knew the name or gender. And I never ever heard her use a name for her daughter. Am I in the wrong?
Story 2.
AITA for keeping my ex-husband homeless? I 51F divorced my husband 47M nearly 2 years ago. I attempted to make him move out when I filed for divorce but he would not. The house was awarded solely to me in the divorce since it was purchased with my premarital separate property assets. But he still refused to move. I ultimately had to evict him and have a deputy come physically remove him from the property. He had found a marginal living situation but did not pay the rent for several months and so was evicted from there also. Now he lives in his car, which he also uses to drive for ride shares, his only income. We have maintained contact because I am one of the only people in his life who will help him. Helping people who are in great need is ingrained in my psyche. And he has asked me if I will allow him to stay in my guest room during the day so he has a place to sleep that is air-conditioned. We live where it is already in the 90s and very humid. He says he won't move any of his things in and that he will both pay me and help me fix some things in the house that are broken, all of which he broke when he lived there. I could use both the money and the assistance, but he has proven unreliable multiple times in the past as far as paying and assisting. Based on past experience, he will also eat all my food and keep the house at 65 degrees all day, which will drive my electricity bill sky high. It's a tempting offer but I just don't want him back here again. He still thinks we can get back together so I suspect that is part of his motive also. He knows me well enough to know exactly how terrible I feel about his current living situation and is capitalizing on that emotion to make me waffle on the subject. I feel like I might be TA because I have the space and I know he needs a place where he can sleep without getting heat stroke. Edit. Update. I have read every comment and I want to sincerely thank everyone here. I am definitely 100 not going to let him back in. I am going to cut off contact. And I am going to get therapy. I want you all to know how much it means to me that you took the time to explain what I should have already known, and deep down, did know, but couldn't make come to the surface. Seeing my situation so clearly through the eyes of others is very enlightening, and I feel so relieved that I can now stand firm and not feel bad about it.
Story 3.
AITA for not laughing at my sister-in-law for making my son cry? My sis-in-law and her husband looked after my 7-year-old overnight for the first time a few weeks ago. My son was excited leading up to it as he was going to spend the night staying at his favorite uncle's house. The next day my sis-in-law was telling us how funny it was when they made the uncle hide and pretended he'd left for the night. My son took it as a joke for a while and kept saying, "Haha, no he hasn't," but they kept it up until he had a mini meltdown and started crying. This was the second sis-in-law who was present, also did this by hiding his Nintendo Switch and pretended they sold it. My sis-in-law was laughing her head off while sat there just looking a bit confused or surprised at what was funny. SIL said something along the lines of, "You don't have to look so traumatized." And, knowing how sensitive my wife's side of the family can be, I just replied, "Sorry, but I don't find those kind of jokes funny." SIL then exploded in front of everyone and went on a rant about how she doesn't feel like she can treat my son how she wants and doesn't tell him off how she wants because of me. For context, when my son was born he was very premature and in intensive care for the first 3 weeks, so for the first year I absolutely was a bit overprotective, and I also got my sis-in-law's back up when my son fell over when he was 3 and screamed, and I went running over asking if he was okay. Even though his other aunt was already there, and that one exploded then too, shouting that she knows how to look after a child. Again, then I was a bit confused that asking my son, who was crying and distressed, if he was okay should get such an angry reaction. I'm now paranoid about how I parent in front on my in-laws. So, am I the asshole? Maybe I'm missing something and should see their POV? Update. Thanks everyone. I just wanted to check I wasn't overreacting or losing the plot. The aunties are generally very loving and caring, just don't have kids of their own and can obviously be quite immature, then get angry if anyone calls out any of their behaviors. Thankfully the need to is few and far between. Really appreciate all the comments and they've been taken on board.